Hey, and welcome to the Neurodivergent Musician Podcast, where I explore the world of neurodiversity and musicianship. I'm your host, John Hart, and today I'll be joined by Jess, who is a qualified NCPS counsellor, director of the Wellbeing Therapy Hut, and qualified in hypnotherapy and EMDR. Jess also has ADHD and professional experience with working with ADHDers. She has been my therapist for a while now, and it has been game-changing. In this episode, we dive into the world of ADHD therapy, but we do dive into other things like every other guest episode. So let's dive into that conversation. So rather than me kind of like mess up your introduction of who you are and what you do and everything as well, I don't know. I mean, you don't have to do an elevator pitch. Don't worry. It's nothing like that and stuff. But
Yeah.
you want to tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So obviously, Jess, a counsellor as well as an ADHDer too. Got diagnosed 4 years ago. So also a late person that's, kind of slipped through the system, so to speak, and just kind of labelled as a difficult person, basically. And then receiving that diagnosis was like, well, this makes total sense. Like, it wasn't just all of this other stuff, it was ADHD. But I think for me, kind of doing the therapy as well, I think it just helps other people as well that are either undiagnosed, going through the process, or diagnosed, to experience another ADHD in a counselling setting as well can be really good. Of like, it's okay. I think it helps relationships as well. And as you know, it kind of can help the other person to feel safe, to feel secure, to feel like, oh, this is normal, whatever normal is. That gets battered around a lot. So, I absolutely love my job. I think, the ADHD helps me with that as well. So for me, I get hyper focused on my clients to a point of almost like I notice a shift in body. I'm like, what was that about? Like, hang on a second, like something went on there. And being able to kind of trust it and go with it, I think my ADHD is a kind of superpower for me in the room as a counsellor, to be able to use that. So I very much am me unapologetically at times, who I am, because I think that just helps people as well.
So were you training before you found out you had ADHD?
No.
So you trained after?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And
is that... well, hang on a second. Right, sorry. So I got the diagnosis after I trained. So I just thought I was just basically neurotic, and was having to kind of manage, and like my tutors were saying, you need to kind of stay still, you can't fidget, like, I've got my fidget stuff to kind of keep myself grounded so I'm not so buzzy. And it was like, no, you need to kind of not. And I was like, oh, but I can't because I can't be me. So I was then like trying to pin myself in a chair,
normal at the top, but your legs flapping underneath, sort of
literally going like a swan. And I was like, this isn't right for me either, because then I'm not being myself in the room either. And the moment I kind of just pushed that away, I'm like, nah, that's not me. And I know my clients aren't getting the best of me, because I'm in my head of like, don't fidget, don't react, don't do something. And I'm like, why am I not?
Third guessing basically every single thing that you're doing and saying and feeling. Yeah.
So then when I got the diagnosis, I was like, oh, this makes total sense. Now I can kind of say, look, here it is. I'm definitely ADHD. So I'm going to do some things, guys. You're just going to have to roll with me, but it's going to be all right. We're going to get there in the end. It's okay.
Do you find that, what am I trying to say? Neurodivergent therapy, but like then neurotypical therapy, do you adapt, or do you just be the same with anyone and everyone?
Everyone and everyone? The same.
Yeah,
just the same. But the thing is, it's the same with like when you kind of first meeting, say, a client. It's for me owning it straight away of like, look, I do have ADHD, so there are times where I will be fidgeting, or I will pick up on things that you might not necessarily pick up on, and I will kind of poke you about that, of being like, hang on a second, something changed there, what is that? And you can tell me, and you know me, that I'm quite blunt and quite open, and I'll be like, you can tell me to do one, like, and that's absolutely fine, but I'm going to bring it into the room of, what's going on there, and I think people just enjoy that, because I'm just being unapologetically myself. Like, I'm so comfortable with who I am, and where I'm from, and all my kind of quirks, so to speak, I know that they've got a purpose, and I know that it's okay. And don't get me wrong, if there's a time where I've got it wrong or something's happened and the client's looked at me as if I've got two wellies and two heads and a welly on top, I'll almost own it and be like, that's definitely my stuff. Like, I'm not even going to try and say that was a you. That's definitely a me, and I'll take it and I'll own it, because I think that's also important.
And I suppose in therapy, I mean, this is why I think it was important. So I had therapy in the past, but obviously not knowing ADHD and stuff as well. Like now, not having to explain I've got ADHD, or not having to it's like explaining to something, whatever it is. It's just like, I think I went to one, they were like, yeah, I took an ADHD mini course last week. I was like, oh, for fuck.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm like, I know I've been doing it for not only that, but I was like, I've been educating myself for like a couple of years, whatever the stuff's well. And when you meet someone else who's got ADHD, it's like, we don't even have to say anything of that. I think that's the most important thing, because you're like, all right, it comes into question. And also, I don't have to apologize for cutting in, bouncing off, doing it, all feeling like something's going on. And I think it's not there's no judgment, criticism, or whatever it is and stuff. Or as soon as I heard that someone took a course or wherever it is, it was just kind of like, it shut down the session for me, because it was just kind of like, I don't feel that lived experience, I think is really, really vital. But how do you feel within therapy and the tendency to cut in, or to, but like, I mean, I know you were telling yourself like, right, I've got to try and keep it contained, but like, that's why I'm like, would I make a good therapist? I'm not obviously, if I kind of like offloaded it and then said, I've got ADHD and stuff as well, but keeping those things at bay.
Yeah.
I mean, because obviously when two ADHDs talk, like, there's kind of acceptable, but it surely changes though when you got a therapy hat on, because you're trying to listen, but you're trying to cut out your own thoughts at the same time.
Yep. So for me, because I'm so visual, what will happen is, like, I'll be given information and I almost have like a massive vision board type thing in the background of my brain. So, and I'll have like pins put in it of like, okay, so you've told me this bit of information. Okay, I'm not going to respond to it right now because you're in a thread. Like you're going, but I'm tagging it, I'm pinning it, and I know that I'm going to bring this up at some point. And it's almost like, especially if you've got two ADHDers in the room, and almost being like, right, okay, I've got to get in as well. It's almost like cutting in when they take a breath of like, right, now I'm going to get you. And this is what I'm going to bring. I'm going to bring all those other bits as well, and kind of wrap it up in a nice bow and kind of say, right, this is what I've noticed. This is what I've seen, and kind of condense it down. But it means that, and this is what I'm saying, like some of the skills of the ADHD where you process kind of quicker as well, I'm able to do that as well with kind of listening, taking in the information, and kind of putting it into sections. Like I regularly say to my clients and to kind of my team when I'm supporting them as well, it's like, I've got filofaxes in my head, so I'm able to take out that filofax and kind of go like, right, this is all linked, I know that this is where this is going and this is what's happening, and blah 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 blah, blah. And I can kind of use that experience, use that kind of hyper focus of picking up everything and being like, right, this is what I've seen, this is what I've heard, how does this feel? And I think that's really powerful for someone that's never really been seen, of almost like someone that gets everything, not just what they're saying, but what they're not saying, how they're showing up, the feelings that not necessarily being validated elsewhere. Because I think that's massive, especially for an ADHD, and especially an undiagnosed ADHD, where you just think, I think I have, but I'm fighting the system and everything. To have someone almost go, do you need that label? Like, granted, it opens up so many doors and it gives you that validation and everything. But if that's your lived experience, why are we not running with that? Why are we trusting, kind of, granted, I know it's got a place and kind of hypocritical of me as a professional, but why are we trusting the professionals with your lived experience? If you're pulling on things like that, why are we not running with that? You feel that you have ADHD. Okay, let's run with that. And I think another thing that regularly happens is when people kind of go, I'm going off on a tangent here. No, you're not. I'm literally with you. I know where we're going with this, and I totally hear this.
Isn't that that apology? I mean, that's just but that's been our whole life,
isn't it?
It's been our whole life, because you just get that blank stare, or you get, I mean, not, I might talk for everybody, but I know I talk for myself. And when I speak to someone else with, like you said, or whoever ADHD, and they validate, I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, it's a similar thing of either, there's just this blank stare of like, shit, I'm not saying the right things, and then I slow down, and then you're just like, you're forgetting what you said, and then you're stupid, and then you're like, sorry,
Yep.
I don't mean that, sorry. So, and I'm trying to be aware when I go, did that make sense? I
Yep.
say that all the time, and like, oh,
Yep.
sorry, I went off on a, sorry, I went off on a tangent there. Like, it's, but when when you've connected with yourself and you say that, it's just like, oh, and I don't know whether it's going to take, it takes so many sessions to kind of like, you know, get to a point where that starts to reduce, because it doesn't go straight away. It's got years and years
No.
and years and years. How do you
Yep.
find with this is interesting actually, because two late diagnosed ADHDers.
Hmm.
Now I'm moving into, obviously I'm doing the musician thing, and I'm kind of moving into, I don't know, mentoring, but then I might go into coaching. It's like using the same sort of process of experiencing all this, and then supporting others, and like service and stuff as well. How
Mm.
do you find, and obviously you don't have to go too deep with this, with a late diagnosis, and then you're
Mm.
going in with others who've got late diagnosis, and then you're like, surely there's got to be a feedback loop with certain things, because if you've gone
Mm.
through it yourself and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, it's kind of, I regularly talk about tribes, yeah, like finding your tribes. And I think late diagnosed ADHD or undiagnosed ADHD, but
Mm,
suspecting that you've got it and not being able to get it, it's finding your people and finding that soundboard of, no, I'm not going mad, because it can feel like you're really losing your head. Like some of the not so great traits of ADHD can make you feel really neurotic, basically, and feel like something's wrong, something's broken. And especially if you're getting that validation from, health service or family or friends, that something's just not quite right with you. Like, you're not normal. This is not okay. There's something broken. To have people that you can kind of go, and that happened for you. Yeah, that happened for me as well. Like, oh my gosh, no, there is a group of people that I feel secure with, I feel safe with. And I think because, for me, I did a lot of work on myself, working out, what was wrong with me, to then be actually go, no, there was nothing wrong with me. It was the
yeah.
wrong people I was with. So when I'm kind of sat with people that are going through the same sort of thing, it's almost just being able to go, I know that feeling, and being able to sit in
Mm.
that, because that can be uncomfortable, of almost like, oh, I remember that was really uncomfortable, because everyone thought I was going crazy, but really I wasn't. I was just having an ADHD moment, and you know what, that was okay. So to almost kind of offer that to someone else that's going through it, of like, no, 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 totally get that, and for them to almost go, okay,
And
that's okay.
that's got to be a, I mean, I know I've had that, I mean, even worse, like with a coach and other
Mm-hmm.
people I've started to meet, it's almost like there is a relief, but there is just, I don't know, there is a loss of like, oh my days, like, uh, oh, you're the first person that actually gets this and stuff like that. So yeah, there is a
Yeah.
constant kind of like, you well, that's why you lose yourself. You put mask over, you then start to people please, you
Yeah.
start to do all those things and stuff over the years. um
Or
but
you live up to the label as well. Do you know
yeah,
what I mean? Like,
yeah,
people
yeah,
think ADHD is this kind of ball of chaos, which it is. I'm not going to fluff it up, but it's the negative of it. And say, like, for school, for me, I was pretty chaotic, like, and I was kind of labeled that, but at times I could put on the mask and be a people pleaser, and I would get by.
mm, mm.
I wasn't stupid. I could get the grades, but I could have done a hell of a lot better if I'd have been focused and diagnosed, but I wasn't. I just slipped under the net because I was able to just get by. And I think that's where my kind of frustration is, of like, well, hang on a second, guys. If this was a call earlier, like, I could have been, super on top of stuff. I could have had different skills. I could have had different support, different experiences, but I didn't. But then if I did have that experience, I probably wouldn't be where I am now. Do you know what I mean? And being able to support.
Isn't that where there's then got to not only be acceptance of obviously
Yeah.
these conditions, and then I mean, with the ADHD and things as well, not making it your identity, which that's what obviously a lot of people go, that label, right, that's me, that's it, might as well put
Yeah.
it after your name, sort of thing. It kind of gets to
Yeah.
that point.
Wear
To
t-shirt, whatever.
Yeah, to like, there's a Venn diagram with all the, because they say you obviously you don't meet every ADHD or autistic person is different, because they've all got
Mm,
different authenticity, different characteristics and stuff. So, and I suppose it's trying to, because I remember when I found out, I mean, I thought it was bipolar, and then I was like, oh fuck, right, okay. And then this was
mhm,
on Christmas Eve of 2020, and it was like, Merry Christmas, and I was like, fuck,
mm,
right, okay. Now you're into this world, and then, but the thing is, the first access was, well, I'll go and get diagnosed, and then go and get medication. There was no kind of like, so if you go on here, you can go and find this community, go and find your tribe, go and find your talk to people and stuff like that. There was this active like, you're going for maybe you're going for an identity crisis. I don't know. Everyone deals a bit different way,
mm.
but like, you go to Google, that's where
Yep.
the bloody hell do I start? Obviously, as social media, it pops out, algorithms pop up everywhere, but you're like, what do I take in? These books here and everything as well. It's not like when you go into a degree of education where you can do it and then you can separate yourself from it. I found
Yep.
I felt it's well, we're all in or nothing as well.
Yep.
I don't know, like, it felt like just 24/7 focus on this. I mean, no wonder like other people around me were like, you just talk about it all the time. I'm like, well, yeah, because this has been missing cog of my whole life. It is a
Yeah.
cornerstone. You're right. It's not everything, but I think I hit a point where I was like, there was ADHD John, there was autistic John, there was dyslexic John, and there was John, and it felt like
Mm,
these are all like disconnected, and then it's got to synergize, then you got to accept
mm,
and embrace. But that period of time, I mean,
mm.
did you when you got diagnosed, how long before that did you sort of find out, well, or you thought you had ADHD? Or was it like, or was it
Oh,
quite short period of time?
crumbs.
Sorry, I'm going back in time. I know we have
No, you're absolutely fine. I
memory
love
issues
this
and stuff.
only because, yeah, exactly. So I was always kind of labeled as the kind of naughty, troubled kid sort of thing that was quite like, so primary school. I used to do every Friday, I used to do a tap dance section in the assembly. Like, granted, confidence was banging. Like, now, not so much because I'm now me sort of thing, but the mask of confidence was spot on. Like, what kid wants to do every Friday a tap dance in assembly? I did. And it just kind of got put down that I was just really confident, but also a little bit chaotic. And then secondary school happened, and that was just a shit show because I
Mm.
didn't find my tribe, I didn't find my people, and I was just constantly flitting between groups. And obviously, you've then got hormones as well added into that. So that was just an absolute car crash. And then it just got worse from there. And people kept saying, like, then I started working at a school, which I absolutely loved because obviously inner child work, I love getting in touch with that. So I could just be chaotic fun, granted, probably not staff wise, but the kids loved me. And it then became like some of the Senkos were like, do you ever think you might have ADHD? And I was like, see, and just carried on skipping through life. And then it was once I started working with another an organization, and the owner's got ADHD, and I pulled up to the meeting, I was running late, and I got to my car and she was meeting me by my car. And I went to get out the car and I was like, I've lost my car keys. And she's like, they're still in the ignition. And I was like, right, okay, perfect. Took the key out, got my bag, put stuff on the roof. And then I was like, where's my car keys again? She's like, it's on the roof. And I was like, right, okay, there it is on the roof. Got all my stuff. And she literally was just like, right, Jess, just stop. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, have you ever been diagnosed for ADHD? And I was like, should say this. So she's like, I really think you might need to kind of explore that. And that for me was kind of like, okay, now's probably the time actually. Let's actually have a look at this and see if this is definitely what's going, even though I knew, do you know what I mean? I knew, I think the majority of my people around me kind of knew. It was just kind of having it said back to me in that way. I was like, I think now's the time actually. I need to look at this in the
When
middle
you
of chaos.
when you started looking into it, did you, I
Yeah.
mean, I can't remember which book it was. I can't remember, there was something, but it was just like tick, 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 tick,
Yeah.
tick. And I was like, what the actual fuck? Why? Not only professionals and like people at school that picked it up on stuff. So like, why well, I had no friends or anything as well. They used to go,
Yeah.
my mum actually said, oh, we just thought it was John just jumping around from
Yes,
different
that was
things, you know.
always the
You
phrase that I used to get.
but you
It's
were like,
just
just
you.
you were just like, and I was like,
Yeah.
bless you, I love you, and thank you for actually going. That's almost like a form of complete acceptance of just like, would you were just you. But I was like,
Yeah.
but I felt a jester in the pack, or like a joke, like, you know, like one
Yeah.
of those jesters with the bows and stuff, like you were talking about, you know,
Yeah.
and constantly doing stupid things. But I mean, at the same time, I'm like, well, there was something. I'm like, I had energy inside of me that had to come out some way. And it's
Mm.
just kind of like, I don't know. I mean, now knowing it, I suppose it gets to a point where once you know something, I haven't got to the point yet. I mean, obviously, you know, we're doing work and stuff as well, but to the point where I think you just said it actually, now at this age and going through
Mm.
that mask and stuff, because I used to be the same sort of thing, like in assemblies
Mm.
or whatever it is, and like gifted or whatever it is, there was something that come up.
Yeah.
And then that period of time where it just felt a blackout to like coming now, I'm like at 40, I'm like taking the mask off and it just feels a little bit vulnerable, a little bit wrinkly or whatever it is. And like going,
Yeah.
I want to be like jumping around and stuff as well, but I'm like, but I'm jumping around now at 40 and like there's, I don't know, there's a sense of like, will I get back to that energy or is it a new
Yeah.
energy? And I don't
Yeah.
know. And I suppose with therapy, and obviously you can, you know, I'm doing coaching and stuff as well.
Mm.
Um, do you ever kind of go into it and then see someone and kind of go, okay, that's where they want to go to, or an outcome or a goal or a kind of thing, or is it kind of unraveling it sort of slowly and just seeing where, you know, I don't know what my question is here. I think I'm verbally expressing
I
at the
know
same
what
time.
your
But
question
yeah,
is,
you know,
sweet.
but you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's, I think that's the, because I'm starting to look into the avenue not as uh the student or the client and like whatever it is. I'm
Mm.
now starting to go to something similar of where you are, like
Mm.
maybe into mentoring and stuff as well, and how I
Mm.
look at others and how I support others. And
Mm.
is it first like a safe space? It's just creating a safe space to be able to just
Yep.
open up and just talk vulnerably, that no
Yeah.
one else
And I
allows you to
think,
do that.
yeah, and exactly that. So it's the same as like exactly what you said of that mask falling away and feeling like this wrinkly thing that's so vulnerable, so new, and kind of just getting to know that part and just getting to nurture it, to appreciate it, to let it grow. And I think it depends on every single person's situation. Like I was very fortunate that I kind of got to a point where I was just like, well, fuck it. Like, this is who I am. If you don't like it, do one, sort of thing. Because obviously I'd done the counselling course beforehand and kind of got in touch with myself and done a lot of healing, a lot of growing. So almost like, okay, this is the final piece of my jigsaw, basically. So, you know, this is who I am. And if you don't like it, I'm so over it. And kind of growing with that. But I think people are in different journeys. Like I've had years and years of therapy, whereas some people are just getting into therapy with their
Mm.
kind of vulnerable self. So for me to almost say, right, what's the goal? Was it sometimes that can be daunting of like, do you know what, people around me don't even know, or they're not as accepting, or you know, actually ADHD is a bad thing for some people. Do you know what I mean? And kind of processing that of like ADHD still has that kind of thing of when you mention to people that are, you know, don't have an understanding or awareness and only have that kind of naughty school kid in their mind as to what ADHD is, they're always like, oh no, do you know what I mean? And you don't want to share. So to be able to just have that space for someone just to say, I just want to sit in this. Fine, let's just sit in this. We don't need to do anything with it,
Mm.
you know, and it becomes their choice. And especially with personalities as well. And you know, not to jump onto like women sort of thing. For women, it can be really difficult as well because you've got the anxiety part, which I know, you know, men get as well, like anyone with ADHD, but women mask a hell of a lot more and it's a lot more internal. It's a lot more, you know, they're not allowed to be hyper jumping around. Granted, I broke that rule, but haha. But it becomes more of a, you know, it's okay. Like there is going to be hyper moments. It's what you do with that, whether it is that you rush into the anxiety part and start giving yourself a hard time, whether it is that you go and run around in a circle for like 20 minutes. it's kind of giving them permission to find out who they are and what their ADHD means to them and who they trust in that network. You go for a shedding, one in therapy full stop, but also when you're kind of getting a label as well, you go through a shedding of not only who you are, but also the people that sometimes are around you, because sometimes
Mm.
they fit the old version and not the new version. And sometimes people struggle when you start moving into feeling more confident with who you actually are, because sometimes they just don't get it. They don't understand it. They don't, because then who are they to you as well? It questions their relationships with you. So it then becomes a whole shift. Like, it's a massive bit of support that's needed. So I think it's more about what that individual needs rather than a kind of setting it up and being like, right, ADHD, fantastic, join the club, let's get cups sort of thing. It's more of a, what do you need this space to be? Is it just processing? Is it just sitting in that feeling of, you've got this?
It's like where do I start? Like
Yeah.
there is that, because there's environment there, like you said, there's your support network around you, there's your internal process, there's and the external process, there's the, well, fuck, still my finances are on fire over there. That's like all the
Yeah.
results. I also actually all the results of undiagnosed and unmanaged or undetected. I called it unhinged,
Yeah.
unhinged ADHD, because I got to a point where if you allow it to keep going on and causing fire and stuff, then this is where everyone obviously is jumping on the negatives, the fire and stuff as well, rather than look at all my creative stuff I've created over here.
Yeah.
John, that it's almost like that's not validated as in the neurotypical world, like productivity of like, oh, you worked 9 to 5, you worked all these hours, right, you were able to do all this amount of work. Da, 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 da. I'm like, I'm struggling to hold a job, do the finances, do all the norms. But look,
Yeah.
I've created a shiny new little
Look at
creative thing over
this.
here. Look at all this and stuff as well, right? And it's just like
Yep.
it's like it's almost like they see it as a child has come up with a painting from school and gone, "Mummy, Daddy did it."
Yep.
That's how I sometimes I feel they see that. That's a blessing. That is what I'm freaking great at. But I'm
Yep.
like, it's not a bloody painting I've got from school to come and show you everything. As well, it's like this is what's created from this brain and stuff as well. But what you're focusing on is the fire. I know it's getting bigger,
Yeah.
and now, but the thing is, I think once I realized there was like I got diagnosed, trying to process it, and then you're trying to make shifts, but you're having to go back over all the stuff that was like, well, all the debt and all of that and all of that. I'm like,
Yeah.
how do you got to get almost that up to normal to be able to then lift up to the next bit, but you're trying to juggle life and trying to do this and stuff as well. It's weird, kind of like having children and everything as well before I was diagnosed to now I'm diagnosed. Not that it's shifted, but I think there's like I'm much more around. I'm not spending as much as I did before. I'm not doing these things. I'm like, that's what awareness and education and kind of like the therapy and lots of other stuff has done. It's like
Mhm.
and it's really hard to, if you've got other people around you, like you said, like people are starting to see you change from this really maybe chaotic person
Mm.
that if things were managed, maybe I had meds or whatever it is and stuff as well, could I have stopped from these things happening? I mean, COVID did one on a lot of people because
Oh, yeah.
obviously we were locked in, and then like that masking feels like you're locking in the ADHD anyway, and that's why things are coming out. Then you lock them in a house
Mm.
or wherever it is
Mhm.
with children and homeschool and everything as well. That
Mm.
was my vehicle to be able to exploding it through the surface, and then the bloody top popped off like a champagne bottle, and all the foam coming out. But I don't know. I mean, have you seen like an uptick and like since obviously coming for therapy, a lot of more ADHD is a lot more neurodivergent folk coming through
Mhm.
because of post COVID, and now obviously I don't know, the waiting lists are getting massive now.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, they are. I think, yeah, COVID helped, didn't help, with a lot of things. I think, especially with ADHD, the demand as well of kind of telling you what you can and can't do can be really difficult as well. So I think, that kind of highlighted a lot of things of feeling like suffocated, of feeling trapped, feeling like
Mm.
couldn't do anything, and cue anxiety, cue depression, cue finding things that you can control, whether that is spending, but not in the way that you kind of would be normal. It would be spending money on things to make you get that hit, that kind of release. So it all makes total sense. And I think we've got social media. I appreciate it, I respect it to a point, but I also feel like it's the kind of devil's arsehole sometimes, that it can open up so much as well. I think it has a time and a place, but I also think in this way it helps people to kind of recognize, oh, this is what ADHD is. It's not all the nasty bits. There are some positives, or, oh, I've definitely got some of these traits as well. But what it's kind of done as well is made it kind of so out in the open that a lot of people are like, oh, everyone's getting diagnosed with ADHD now. Everyone has it. It's like, no, no, don't get me wrong, that, on a scale, there might be some people that have some traits and everything, but it's not as black and white as what some people are making out of, like, everyone has it now. Everyone's getting a diagnosis. Everyone has this. No, it's not. Like, some of us have had to really fight for this diagnosis, and have had struggled for years and years. It's not that everyone is. Maybe there is a hell of a lot more people that are finally being seen and getting diagnosed. Why take it away from them? That everyone is.
Also,
No, that's not the
why
case.
would you why would you want it? Like if
Well,
why 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 would you want the
yeah,
label, the diagnosis, the med? I mean, I know there's I'm just kind of sort of maybe playing devil's advocate of kind of like,
yeah,
there's why would I want to say I've got ADHD and like put myself into a situation where you're gonna, I don't know, criticize? I'm trying to
judge,
be as
yeah,
truthful, like, or however it is. It's just trying to be as like,
yeah,
and you're right, like, to be able to go through that process, if you're going to go through the proper internal dissection of everything that you've
mm,
gone through your whole life, the grief of it, the internal awareness and education, and all that other stuff as well. It's like, if I suppose if you were to write all that out, right? Okay, if you want if you want to get officially diagnosed with ADHD and like do all the proper channels and everything as well, because you can't just turn up and go, fill it in a question. You've got to go through loads of different channels to be able to do it.
mm,
There's also a case of like, well, why would you want to do that? So that's where the sort of validation of kind of like, well, it really is it, the struggles of it. And I think
mm,
we're kind of on the same page of it, of if you can get the support
yeah,
around that, I think that's the key to society, rather than focus on the struggles and problems and stuff as well. It's just like, well, find the solutions that can help with that, but don't let that take away from what it actually gives you. The real powerful stuff of it is, for me, it's
yeah,
creativity. I mean, it's just that kind of abundance and that energy and that, the different wiring and things as well. But
mm.
um but yeah,
I think
uh
having things rephrased as well, especially in relationships, is powerful. So, like, say, um, for me, I was going about to rope you in and be like, for us, but for me, it's, having an intent of like, right, I am going to sort out the washing. I'm going to do it. This is my job today. And then getting distracted and causing chaos in every single room, and almost like having to then retrace back through the chaos to get the jobs done, whilst functioning, parenting, all of that sort of stuff. What I love is that when there was a reframe of, I see that you've done quite a lot of side quests today. Yes, it's not that I've not done the original job. I've done all the other bits that need to be done. Granted, maybe half-heartedly because I've got distracted by something else, but I've given it a good bash. Like, I've attempted to do it, and almost like it becomes a running joke of, I've done half of it. That's a partnership. Like, you can do the other half now. Do you know what I mean? It becomes more of a kind of this is who you are and this is okay. Like, it's not malicious. It's not that I've gone out my way to just deliberately mess up your day. It's because I've got all good intentions. I've just been distracted and I've got loads of little bits done. If we could group it all together, that's a really successful day. But it doesn't look it, because it looks like I've just done half a job with certain things, unless I'm hyper focused, and then I am there all day long doing that stuff. But it's kind of the acceptance, it's the terminology that is used by others that are close to us that really makes that difference. That it's not something that is wrong with us. It's a powerful thing of almost like, no, I appreciate it. I've been wanting to kind of half do the plants that are dying, and I can see that you've really given a good bash on the landing, because there's soil everywhere and there's dead bits of the plant hanging off. But you've started it, fantastic. Do you know what I mean? And that almost just takes the pressure off. Okay, you can see that I've done it. I've done half of it, and I'll get back to it at some point. Or you could do it. That would be great. Like, help me out here, because I'm over that bit now.
Rather than add a but at the end of those
Yes.
things, like, oh, you did that, but, and
You
it's
didn't
just
finish
like,
it.
oh, you could just stop there, just stop it, because I
Yeah.
know we are positive words of affirmation. I mean, it's like we have a lack of dopamine. So if like
Mhm.
the best way do, if you want to make an ADHD's day and to lower their dopamine, is to jump on the things that they haven't done. It's like,
Yes.
that's just not the way to do it. And I like that. Like, if you can get to a point where, because I know with the kids, and one of our kids is neurodivergent. It's just like I'm having to like tussle between an understanding, because I'm going through it stuff, but also my ADHD is flaring up because of that's happening. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's a real like, oh my days. Okay, all right, I've got and that I know it takes a little bit of time, but I'm
Mhm.
like the positive sort of affirmation. Do you ever find though that do you give yourself sort of grace, like when you make mistakes and when you do those things, or will you jump on it, or does it depend on the day?
Depends on what mood I'm in. Yeah, exactly. It depends on where my anxiety levels are as well. So, like, if I'm having a proper, when you get one of those days where it's just not gone to plan, and you've kind of lost yourself,
Mm.
and you've started things and it's not gone the way that you needed it to, so you can ride that kind of dopamine hit of almost like, that's gone really well, smash that right onto the next one. When that's not gone well, and it's been loads of different things, it it will kind of be like why can't I just do a simple thing? Like, why can't I just follow through with a task sometimes? Like, why is this so difficult? And then there'll be days where I'll have the same sort of day, but for some reason I'm a bit more resilient that day. And it'll be like do you know what? It's just one of those shitty days, and it's all right. Like, tomorrow will be different, or next week will be different, or do you know what I mean? And almost there's an acceptance with it. I think it really does depend on that day, that moment, that feeling, because regulating your emotions when you're in ADHD is kind of really difficult, and that's coming from the therapist. Do you know what I mean? Like, even I struggle with it sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, like, literally today can do one, and that's okay. I think it's just accepting that, and who doesn't like to wallow every now and then? But I do think there needs to be a cap with a wallow, because then it kind of can trickle into other things. But I think it's just about allowing yourself to just feel shit about it for a day. ADHD, I love my ADHD to a point, and then there's days where I really don't flipping like it.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that's okay to have a day of, I just wish that I could just do basic bloody things. Like, I'm not asking for much. I just wish I could do that. But then there's other days where I'm like, no, I can't do that. And that's absolutely fine. It's my ADHD and that's okay, sort of thing. Yeah, I think it just changes every single day.
It's like, I'll be driving home like with the kids, and then I get a text, and I'm just, and then, but it's one of those texts where you're just like, oh, for fucks. And then like I come home, but then it's really hard to go. I can't like put it to the side. I
Yep.
can't. It's like it's gone a hyper focus and stuff as well. And I'm like, you shouldn't have checked that text. You shouldn't have checked your phone. But
Yep.
sometimes these things go off, and you don't. It comes in unexpected, and then and I know a lot of people cope with it in a different way, but there was a sign this week. So it happened yesterday, and then I sort of then my kids came in, and my wife, and she was like, "You're right," and I'm like, "Nope, gonna have to." take out 5 minutes. They went out in the garden, and I had to sit on the sofa, put my head down, and then then distract myself and read something else, whatever it was. And slowly, it's almost like when those moments happen, I feel like a massive dent in the battery goes really quickly, and
Yeah.
then I have to charge it up somehow. I'm just kind of like, did your therapy hat ever kick in?
Oh, all the time. But she's amazing. Like when she jumps in, I'm like, oh, thanks, babe.
And
Over to you. You take the reins.
is that words, or is that like coping mechanisms or reminders or something else, or like
All of it. It can be anything. So it can be exactly what you said. It will be like a message or something will come through, and I'll be like, oh no, not today, Satan. Like, and it would be like a, huh? Right, I am not in the mindset to deal with that. But then I would have acted out like three different possible responses, their responses back to me, and the whole exchange sort of thing in literally 5 seconds. So I've given myself like 5 seconds worth of three massive conversations that have turned up in such a short period of time. So no wonder the battery's bloody gone, because you've just experienced it. And then it becomes like you're so flat. And then you almost catch yourself as to what has just gone on here, because it just happens so quick. Like all those feelings happen so quick. And then what will tend to happen is either I will be like completely lost my head and I will be on that kind of road for a little bit longer. And then I'm like, right, stop it. What is it that you need right now? What are you feeling? What's coming up? And what do you need? So it would be like, right, okay, I'm feeling, and I will literally rattle off, no thought. It will be, right, I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling a little bit worried. I'm feeling a little bit rejected, because obviously we love a bit of rejection with ADHD. I also feel like I'm not good enough. And I won't put any judgment on what's coming out of my mouth. It will just be free flowing, because I trust myself to know that this is what's coming up for me, and this is true for me in this moment. And then it'll be like, right, what do I need now? What do I need to kind of stabilize that and to protect myself right now? And it might be, okay, so I know that I'm feeling anxious. What can I do with that? I might need to just literally write down my response, or what I would like to say. I love doing this, of what I would like to reply. And don't judge yourself on that. It could be even the simple words of, you're a twat. Full stop. Thank you very much. And getting the satisfaction of just writing it, don't send it, but just writing it down. Do you know what I mean? Can sometimes be enough of, oh, I just needed to say that. And then it's about how you can kind of top yourself up. So whether it is, distracting yourself with reading, for me, it's kind of listening to music. Music is massive for me.
yeah,
So if I'm raging, I will put System of a Down on, or Rage Against the Machine, and I will go back to my teenage years, and I will literally go into that mode, and I will get my hit that way. Or I will sing full pelt at the top of my lungs to get that kind of, instead of screaming, I will sing and get that release as well. Because I think it's so important to get that energy
to get
out, because
out.
we're so used to
Yeah,
containing
yeah.
it, pushing it down. It's not healthy. It really is not. And the same with like with my kids, I've got one that's neurodivergent as well. So I then mirror it to him, that we can almost do it together. And it's great when he kind of checks in. And this is what I love, is that he will then pick up if I'm buzzing before I even picked up I'm buzzing, and he'll just come in and do a kind of sense check, whether it's a hug or be like, are you okay? And I'm like, oh, I'm giving something off to you because you've come in and checked on me, because we pick up on things as it comes up. And I'm like, no, I'm not actually, mate. Thank you for spotting that for me. And vice versa, because I
Okay.
think it's so powerful to kind of have someone else, and work with it. And showing our kids that it's okay to have an absolute meltdown. It's what you do with it after, you know.
Mm.
Um, what I'm also known for is spidergrams, because for me, I know that if I've got a problem, there are going to be loads of different options out of that problem. So let's work it out. Let me bash it out. And then what happens is you then feel more in control, because you've looked at all the possible solutions, and there'll be one step that you can take out of all of that that will help you to feel more in control. Do that step. Don't do the most complicated one out of all of that, because that's just going to set you up to fail. But do the easy one, and choose that, because that's going to give you the dopamine hit to then take all the other bits on.
How long did it? I mean, this is a length of a piece of string, but it's like
Mm.
all of this feels to someone if they were to give up smoking, or they're giving someone as well, and then they have that it keeps coming back. You can get all the patches, you can get everything as well, but there's just, because they've been doing it for so many years, it's just like, shit, I need a smoke, smoke. And this is the same with, like, I suppose, default responses of, you're just fucking useless. You start obviously internally
voice,
bullying yourself, like, that.
Yep.
And it's got so big because obviously it's been there for, I mean, it depends on when you put the mask on, but for me, it would have been like late teens, so it's like 20 years. And so that 20-year-old mask that's come on, and like, is this just is it more of an awareness thing at first, and then once you become aware of it, because this is the thing I'm starting to realize when I'm in arguments or when I'm in discussions or when something happened, I'm starting to realize it afterwards, obviously, which is like reactive. I suppose the goal then is trying to go and work it out when it's happened during, like, if the emotions are starting to build up. But like you said, it happens so quickly. I mean, obviously the ninja would be like proactive, but I don't hardly ever get a proactive, like, right, John, you're just about to go into this. You're just about to say this. That's not going to bloody happen. Who or what ADHD does that? But that would be like master level of trying to sort of figure that out. But the coping mechanisms and stuff as well. It's, I suppose, at the same time trying to make it, because I forget everything when I'm in that mode, and you're like, well, what can pull it out? And if you've got no support around you, the only thing I did was pull myself away from other people. But I don't know if that was the right thing. You go into another room and you isolate yourself, but then you do something, but you're like, well, you need to shut down. And that felt like a muscle memory thing. It's almost like I didn't have to think about it. You just went into that. Is some of those things are like, they just feel natural, you don't even have to think about it? Is it those kind of coping mechanisms where you can just kind of, it's just just keep trying to repeat them over and over until they become a point where it's automatic?
I think there's so many different things. So is it making sure that even though we all have that critical voice, it's whether you listen to it or whether it's kind of pumped up on steroids, but looking at the positives. So if you can install a kind of nice voice, one that kind of gives you the affirmations, gives you the reassurance and all of that, whether it's someone that you've heard, whether it's, you're boosting yourself up, that would be ideal. It's looking at kind of having those conversations before you even get into that state. So when you've done your painting that you said, that kind of kid painting, then you're like, this is amazing, but everyone else is kind of looking at it and like, yeah, okay, great. It's having that voice of, do you know what? I know that I did the best I could there, and that I actually think that's a really good bit. It's pumping yourself, because you've got to be your own cheerleader, because the moment that you allow other people's voices to kind of put you back down again, you're back to square one. So it's knowing that you've done the best that you could, and do you know what? You smashed it. That was great, considering everything else. I think it's also finding different ways. Oh, hang on. I'm rebooting. I've lost my thread.
I've got a bouncing, but I don't want to go cut you off.
No, bouncing. I might pick it up in a sec.
Is it like train yourself with these skills when you're regulated?
Yes.
Not when you're dysregulated.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that way, definitely. If you can kind of go, right, train it up, like, so when this happens, take yourself to this room. It might sound really crazy, but it's almost like act out. Go to the room that you will go into, sit down with whatever you need, put it in a certain place, put your SOS box, wherever it is and stuff, to the point where, and then you act it out so many times when you're regulated. When you're dysregulated, it's almost like doing the same running route. If you do it when you're regulated, but you're having an off day, and you're like, I don't want to go for a run, but you're like, actually, I know the route. Oh, it's all fine and stuff. And then you go on it. Is that the best approach? Because I think a lot of people think, oh, well, I'll try my best and stuff as well. And then when you're dysregulated, it's like, well, everything just goes out the window. Oh, no, that didn't work.
Yeah, it goes to shit, doesn't it?
It's almost like that. It's almost like, actually, that I haven't thought about that before. I was like, shit, yeah, I should be freaking training myself when I'm regulated and normal, and putting myself into that muscle memory moment. And maybe I've done that. And that's why yesterday I took myself to this spot on the sofa, This is where the cushion was. My book's there. Da, 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 da. And it was just like, that was clockwork. But
Yeah.
actually, maybe I've done that before. It's almost that you can do things to make yourself relaxed anyway. So go and sit in that spot and having my book makes me relaxed. So
Hmm.
maybe when you're dysregulated, I did exactly the same thing. I don't know.
Mm.
That's this is a moment, an ADHD moment where I'm trying to verbalize something, but I've just realized something. Now I'm trying to verbalize something else. We
Yep.
just did the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just like shit. There's multiple threads here going on here
Yep.
and stuff as well.
Exactly.
Like, oh bugger, what were we actually talking about? But I, I suppose, and that's normally at the end of these podcast episodes, I kind of go, what would be your advice to someone who is just literally they've never had any therapy coaching or anything, and they've just
Yeah.
found out maybe they're not even diagnosed and they've just found out that it's
Hmm.
like where do they start? I mean we all know that journey, and is it better now, but or is it too much awareness going, like you said, social media is like
Mm.
blown up everywhere. You don't really know who you're looking at. The algorithms have pulled every single thing in. You're
Yeah.
like, I'm a professor's, but I'm looking at someone who's just started up a channel and you're doing this and stuff, to then go to books. Do you go to this? Do you go
Mm.
to the foundations and stuff? And that's where ADHD will ADHD itself with overwhelm and stuff. Um,
Yep.
I don't know. Where if you were to go back, would you have gone the way you did? I mean, obviously you had someone else sort of say something and then you went into those channels, or
Hmm.
would you have gone a different approach to what's around now?
Think,
I think there was a question there.
yeah, no, there is a question. For me, I would I change it? No. And that's only because I've accepted that I needed to go through all of that to be who I am now, to be able
Mm,
to support people. Do you know what I mean? Because if I didn't have the dark and nardy side of things and this whimsical approach that, everything was absolutely fantastic, I'd be in a completely different spot. And I absolutely love my job, and as dark and twisted as it sounds, I love sitting with people when this when they're really like raw and vulnerable and feeling like no one else gets it, and being able to sit there and go, it's okay.
mm,
Like, you don't need to shut down, you don't need to push this away, it's okay. And because I think until you've gone into that dark spot, you don't really feel comfortable sitting with someone else in that dark spot either. So I think I wouldn't change it. And I know that sounds really dark and twisted, but I think it's a superpower for me, to be able to sit with someone that's really struggling and just go, I'm here. I'm not going to go
mm.
anywhere. I'm not going to shut you down. I'm not going to divert your attention to something else. I'm just going to sit with you here because it's a little bit shit. I
It's
think that's powerful.
I don't think there's not a magic pill to be able to go, okay, this is the process.
Yeah.
You know, you can go to websites, you can go to sort of certain things, but I think you're right. I was like, I just threw myself into it. Sometimes it was like I hyper focused on ADHD. The
Yeah.
ADHD hyper focused on it. It's just a vicious cycle. And some people were like,
Yeah.
were cautious. Oh, John, I wouldn't read too much there. I wouldn't. I'm like, no, but I have to. I know my own levels of
Yep.
if I'm overdoing it or whatever and stuff. And if I overdo it, then I take a day off, or whatever it is. Or no, I don't
Yeah.
want to bloody talk or read or do anything about ADHD. I
Yep.
don't want to do it. I don't want anyone to mention it and stuff as well. But then the next day I'm like,
Yep.
right, let's go again. I just need that kind of time off. But I also, and one of your thoughts before we finish
Mm.
on those who
Mm.
find out they've got, ADHD, they've lived through it, but then they
Mm.
go from living through it actually and going into professional with it. Like that, there's something there of like when I went to wellbeing therapy, and I was just like, because I was getting, I've gone through a few therapies before I found out, and I was just like, okay, there was something missing the whole time. And we know
Yeah. Yeah.
it was not only it was the ADHD, which is the primary, and then there's the autism and stuff as well, which are kind of the secondary.
Mm.
And that was like, I want to go into this again now, but I want now to find, an ADHD therapist. And then knowing that you have a lived experience and you have the professional hat, and both hats, I don't know.
Mm,
It's just like, what am I trying to say? Sort of almost like going through the whole lived experience, and then you kind of, it's like what I do with musician. It's like, it
mhm,
felt really authentic to me at first and stuff, right? And somehow it became a career on its own because I wanted to do all the time. Neurodiversity for me now is, I mean, I've only been in the doors for a few years and stuff as well, but it's very much becoming like, I've learned lots about this, but I don't want to keep it all to myself. I don't want to just, live this life and that as a musician. I now want to, I'm
mhm,
starting to transition into a career that, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's any data. I don't know anything as well, but like for people who have lived experience going into professions and stuff,
mhm.
um, have you noticed that any time within the
Yeah,
therapy
I think,
field?
yeah, definitely. I think therapy field's a bit of a weird one anyway, full stop. Um, my stance on therapy, but bearing in mind I am a therapist, and it's therapy is like dating. You need to find your person. There's counselors that are not for you. You're not going
Mm.
to click with them, and there's some people that won't work with me, and that's okay. Do you know what I mean? It's not about having one therapy session or having an experience with one counselor and being like, that is not for me. There's so many different people in therapy. Yes, we've got the skills, we've got the knowledge, we've got the theory and everything, but it's the person that you connect with. It's not the theory. And I think that's more important. I think you're drawn to the therapist that the one that you choose to work with is the one that you're going to get the most from. And it's not necessarily down to the theory, it's the relationship that you get something from.
Well, do you know what this? This is why it really connects with the teachers I connected with didn't do their teacher training and go straight into teaching. It's because they go and read
Yeah.
by the book. It was the ones who did their teacher training and then they went and traveled the world, and then they came in and they kind of offshooted with different things, or like they had, you just, I don't know, there was more character to them. And I'm not slating other, new teachers. I'm not doing that at all.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
I think for and maybe that worked for others and stuff as well. But I think there's this lived experience of something that
Yep. Makes it relatable.
without a doubt, because you can
Mhm,
draw on certain things and stuff, and also you can make the relatable sort of side of it and stuff as well, where you don't have to
mhm.
explain, or like reading about it, educating and learning about it feels very external. So you're like, you've
Mhm.
analyzed it on the full front and stuff as well. And you might know what's going on and stuff as well, but actually to know it on a day-to-day basis, and like when you're in this
Yep.
situation, or with me conversation now, and I
Mhm.
know, like you'll say, "Oh, I've had a ADHD moment." I'm like, "Oh, I know that's exactly what, like that. That's not planned. Like that just
Yep.
happens in the middle of our conversations, whether it's, and it's just like that is when that actually can make you feel more seen, heard, and validated
Yes.
than, okay, well, maybe try this and try and do this, or whatever it's and stuff. And that's where, like others, like I said, who've like, oh, I took a little mini course. I'm like, oh, and they call it ADHD brain. I was like, oh my goodness me. I feel like I just,
Yeah.
banging my head against the thing, because I'm like, you're reading up and stuff and then coming into
Mm.
it, and I feel more educated the more and I don't want to feel that. And
Yeah.
that's where you feel like that's this sort of objective vibe of it, but the emotional sort of
Mm.
side of it. But that was interesting because I'm like, I've actually had some musicians, because of the podcast, meet out, sort of connect with me because the way I've been
Mm.
talking, and they've just found out they got ADHD and stuff as well. And so they've literally messaged me, and it just feels like I don't know, we're connecting more on a lived experience, and they're kind of going through this
Yeah.
vulnerable sort of stuff as well. And it's just like, I don't know, I'm not talking to them in any other hat apart from, I know what you're going through, mate. And
Yep.
that means more to them because they feel like it's like peer to peer. Then
Yeah.
yeah,
And you don't need to explain it
yeah.
because it's just got, that's it, full stop. Like and it
Or you
it,
can just
it
put it to
doesn't
the side.
become,
It feels like you can put
yeah, and it's not
ADHD
second
and
guessing.
autism to the side and
Yep.
just have a conversation without having to go,
Yep.
right, just in case, let you know, I might cut you up, I might bounce off, I might stop, I might forget what I'm doing, da 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 da. And like, I always remember going for the first time. This is when I started to sort of pick up on it. My mate, who's neurotypical, invited me out to a pub, and they had neurodivergent mate, sorry, ADHD mate, who was medicated, and we turned up, and I ended up not talking to my neurotypical mate all night because the two of us, we only just met, but we had a 3 hour just whatever it was, and we were like,
Yeah.
shit, it's closing time, and I was like, there was no kind of pre-framing, or like there was no apology actually, although we can tend to apologize, but I think
Yeah.
when we do say sorry, we almost forget who we're talking to. I think that's what it is as well. It's just like a pre-pro thing, but it's those
Mm-hmm.
things where I think if more people can just have uh if I just have one ADHD chat a week, I can actually
Mm-hmm.
have succinct chats with other people. If I don't,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who I'm going to chat to, whatever it is, and stuff as well. So it's stuff like that that feels it's not necessarily treating it or doing this stuff as well. It's just like being in an environment. If once you go
Yeah.
into that healthy environment with someone you can talk to, and someone where it's like sensory friendly, wherever it is and stuff, just feels
Mm-hmm.
like you can just breathe for, I don't know, a little bit. If I had that all the time, oh man. But I think that's where just slowly adapting it or changing it. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I think my I caught me fart in a jar earlier. The thought that had escaped me. Taking it back to basics. So, say if you're in a discussion or a heated discussion, and things are feeling, and you get that kind of body sense of this is too much, and you're ready to go. Notice where you're feeling it in your body first off. Take it right back. You don't need to do anything with it straight away. Just notice where you're feeling it in your body. And then when you're able to get away, move away, whatever it is, look at what that feeling is. What is that feeling and why did it come up? What I would then say is the next time that it happens, if you've worked out what it is, you've worked out what you need. So then offer yourself that. Or if you need to hear something, then offer it to the other person. And a lot of the times, especially, like I said, I kind of flitted on it and flitted off it, the rejection side of things. If we've heard something that we've taken as a rejection, it's going to shut us down. It's going to make us feel really gnarly. It's not going to win. No one is going to win in that conversation. So, almost if you've heard something, tell them what you've heard. They might not have said it the way that we've heard it, and I'll own that as well. So, people
Mm-hmm.
around me will be like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I know, Jess, yes, yes, thank you very much, very funny. But it's almost kind of saying, right now I'm feeling rejected because what I heard was that I'm too much, that I'm not good enough, that I didn't do something right, and I'm feeling dismissed. Is that what you're telling me? Because then it nips it in the bud.
Mm.
9 times out of 10, people don't want to deliberately upset you or hurt you. So if you kind of say it like that, 9 times out of 10, they go, no, I didn't mean it like that. I meant just blah, 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 blah. Okay, so you didn't mean it like that, but that's what I heard. And that's why I'm feeling way like over, like type thing. So I'm going to need 5, but I just needed to kind of tell you this. So then you're starting to just expand your window of tolerance just that little bit each single time until you're able to kind of go, right, I'm feeling really pissed off right now because you're making me feel blah, 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 blah. Then being able to say, look, I've heard that you're saying that I've done something wrong and that I'm not good enough. The other person then has had this conversation with you before, so then knows how to do this dance with you of like, no, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, I just wish that you'd have done the dishes first because it would have made things more easier. Right. Well, I could do the dishes first. It was just because I saw that, I don't know, the bins needed emptying, blah, 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 blah. It then becomes a different conversation. The problem is then externally rather than internally. It's the fact
Mm.
that the dishes are not done. The bin's been put out first. I don't know why I brought that up, but here we are. It doesn't become that you've let someone down, that you've not done the right thing. The problem's the dishes. It diffuses things so much quicker.
Is is that where in a mutual conversation, now this is the thing, if it's someone you don't know, obviously there's a
Yeah.
that's that's a light fact. I'm probably
Yeah.
never going to see you again.
Yeah.
But someone obviously, real close family in the house, or partner or whatever it is and stuff.
Hmm.
when you're learning the ropes
Yeah.
of these things, because it is learning the ropes, because it's almost sometimes got to happen multiple times to get the awareness, because you can simulate it as much. Obviously, this is why I say do it and really regulate and stuff as well. But when it actually happens, I suppose, the where does it sit with the mutual sort of side of it? So, like when you've got two people and it's happening. Now, obviously, we're trying to do everything we can in our area, but we're trying to figure out the emotions and try and take it away and try and do this and trying to get those coping mechanisms in.
Hmm.
But we're trying to do it in a window where it goes 0 to 60 in like bloody 3 seconds. But but the other, like you just said, sometimes reframing the language from the other person, or I know, okay, right, okay, we've got to mutually work this out. And also, uh would you say that then in that situation the ADHD is the issue, or do you not kind of like
No,
go in that,
ADHD is
as in
never the
like,
issue. What are you talking about?
is if there is a flare up? So for instance, if there's a flare up, emotional flare up,
Yeah.
and that's the ADHD has flared it up, right?
But why has it flared it up?
Well, there's obviously been a trigger.
Right. Ta-da! It's
So
not the ADHD. It's the
okay,
trigger. So what's the trigger?
so that's so is that underneath? Is that something well, yeah. This so if I've flared up, but then because I've flared up, and then my partner starts to flare up,
Yeah.
is that just two triggers, or is it that person's got emotionally like triggered because of the ADHD?
Yeah.
My emotions are flared up because of the ADHD.
Hmm.
So it's the ADHD we're going to focus on, not each other, or is it the
No,
actual thing, like whatever
it's the
the
actual thing.
problem things and
It's
stuff?
not the ADHD at all, because then what you're doing is you're shaming the ADHD and your
Yeah,
responses. There is nothing broken with that in any way, shape, or form. Find out what it was that triggered it, like what kind of set it off and caused you to feel unregulated. That's where the work needs to go. So, and almost granted, what I'm not saying is that you can kind of go and scattergun your emotions here, there, and
no,
everywhere. But what it is kind of verbalizing to the other person, right, I am really unregulated. I'm trying to work out what's going on for me. I can't tell you, because sometimes we can't work out
yeah,
what actually
yeah,
triggered it in the first place, because exactly what you said, it goes to 0 to 60 within 0.5 of a second. And then almost recognizing that there's some upset that has been caused, of almost like, look, I know that my reaction has caused this as well, but I need to go and work out what has happened here as well. And then almost feeding it back to, right, it was this comment, it was this thing, it was this email, it was this text, it was whatever it was, it caused me to feel anxious. And the way that I responded was okay, not okay at all. And I'll take ownership, I take accountability. But it also depends in that exchange as well. Do you know what I mean? Because
because
if
it's
the other person's
I so
triggered,
see it. So it's got to be mutual responsibility
yeah.
and accountability, and
Yes.
mutual consideration. Like I'm like, because I know sometimes I'm like, look, I'm only aware of it after it's happened.
Yep.
Like, and I don't want to go to you. That's not going to happen next time or again,
Yep.
so, because it's ADHD. It's just plays a part in that and stuff as well. Like,
Yep.
but the rather than kind of going, well, I'll work on this. Is it more like, can we work on this?
Yes.
It's got to be,
Yeah.
it's because it's got to be a mutual thing. It's just, I almost say, like, if you compared it to something like asthma, and then they started, that other person started having, heavy breathing, and then I
Mm-hmm,
started
mm-hmm.
flaring it up even more, and then they went to an asthma attack.
Yeah.
uh if they turn around and go, I'll try not to breathe too hard, I'll try not to have an asthma attack next time,
Yeah.
there's obviously a vehicle that's like, if I see the
Yeah.
heavy breathing, I'm like, oh shit, no, that's gonna have an asthma attack, I better back, or I better kind of like
Mm-hmm.
reframe or whatever it is. I don't know if that's a right analogy, but that does, it's in regards to flaring something up. It's
Mm-hmm.
one of those that I think there's the kind of the mutual thing, especially when you're trying to navigate this dance. It feels like a
Mm-hmm.
dance in some
Yeah.
ways. I'm not dancing this alone, and I can't just solely. I can do, obviously I'm doing everything I can. It's going to take a long time stuff, so, or but the other person maybe on the other side, it's difficult. It's different if obviously it's children. I know there's sort of
Mm-hmm.
sides of it, and they we've got to navigate that and stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
And also when those happen and I flare up and I'm like, oh shit, I'm the role model, and the adult, and they're too young and stuff as well, and that can be quite complex. But when it's two adults, and that is mutual consideration or mutual, but
Is it
everyone's
two
in their kind of
adults?
development journey with it and trying to figure it out, and like unpicking like this is actually a thing that's in, especially late diagnosis
Mm. But a
before.
lot of our arguments are a feeling of being judged or feeling of being dismissed, which is childlike. And then it feels like the other person's the parent. So we almost feel like we're being told off.
Mm,
So you're saying it's two adults. I would poke around that
that's
of,
really interesting.
is it? Because it's different states. If you think of when an ADHD kind of flare up happens, and it's reaction, isn't it? It's reacting to that stimuli, whatever that might be. It can be very childlike at times, and I'll own that. I love a tantrum, as much as the next person. But it's then about the other person is seeing that and possibly coming in as a parent. And what we really need is another adult to kind of just go, look, I see that you're feeling pretty overwhelmed right now. Do you need anything? Do you need space? Do you want me to just sit with you? Like, what is it, sort of thing?
Yeah,
For
no,
them to almost go, oh, oh yeah, oh hi there, yeah, definitely just having a bit of a meltdown over here, but it's fine. Give me a couple of minutes and I'll be with you. I'm not quite sure what's happened here. It then stops. But when the person kind of comes in and go, oh, will you just, blah, 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 it then almost triggers it even more. I'm like, and I'm going to flare this up even more, and I'm going to really mess this up. It's the different energy. That's why I'm saying, like, the mutual. It needs to be support, doesn't it? Same as with, like, your analogy with the asthma sort of thing. It's support. It's looking at the situation and going, oh, okay, something's changed here. Not quite sure what, but let me be curious about it. Let me just kind of
mm,
ask a couple of questions and see what's going on and what they need right now. But the thing is, with, for me personally, and I would just say it for myself, but too much choice can be so bloody overwhelming, especially when you're in a meltdown. As anyway, to then have that, choice of, well, do you need me to get, get you a book? Do you need a drink? Do you need something to eat? Do you need five? Do you need? And that can feel even more of like, I don't know. I don't know what it is that I need right now. I just don't know. Kind of just having two options.
yeah,
Okay. Do you
yeah.
need me to sit with you, or do you need me to just give you five? What do you need right now? Okay, you want to be left alone. And then, almost because of the rejection side of things, it can then be, okay, let me know when you're ready, but I just want to let you know that I love you and it's going to be all right. I'm here when you're ready. It's a simple phrase. Do you know, it's not going to cost you any more just to say that to someone that's just feeling so bloody overwhelmed and feeling really lonely and feeling so heightened that they don't know what to do. And
Mm,
it's not something that can be controlled to a point. Do you know what I mean? It takes ages to get to the kind of zen level of like, oh, I'm feeling this. And even then, I kind of call bullshit. But it's kind of getting those phrases in place so that it just nips it in the bud quicker.
well, because
And then the arguments don't need to happen.
the tendency for 0 to 60 in 3 seconds is catastrophe. So catastrophe will be the nuclear of like, um I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, without a
Yeah.
doubt. That's what's happening in that moment. So
Mm-hmm.
it like you actually, what you've just said there is just like that little bit of reassurance of like, okay, and also being aware of just like we're dysregulated. There's a dysregulation right now, and so we've been learning about colored zones and stuff in our family, and trying lots of different things as well. But like that terminology or language or whatever it is and stuff in the moment, and I don't know with, it's very hard for, well, I can only speak for myself, to have a calm head in that situation, and someone else. I mean, if it's two ADHDers, yeah, that can be that could be nuclear. No one's gonna have a calm head, and we're just gonna end up, I don't know, just collapsing or whatever it is and stuff as well. But if there's someone else who has got a calm head, it's just like it, that might be the intervention to, like you said, to kind of go, right, one or two things. It could be, obviously a hug is regulating.
Yeah.
That, and that's reassurance as well. But it might be there being pent up anger or whatever it's and stuff. It's just like, okay,
Yep.
let's take 5 or whatever it's and stuff as well. So I think, because naturally, especially I suppose if you go through therapy or if you go through, going through these things, it's going to unlock things as well. So it's going to be, I know there's a heavy weight that you carry around on top of all the other shit you've got going on in your life. You're still trying to juggle everything, but you're now unlocking. Because I sort of find like the more you unlock inside, obviously it's going to be beneficial. Like, I don't know how many months down the line, which is great, but you're having to do all that in the middle of normal life. So when you get into an argument, it could be even weightier because you're like, oh my days, I'm feeling so heavy and stuff. But I suppose that then is trying to like, rather than bottle it up and like you've got to tell the people like, look, I'm going through this right now. This is what might happen and stuff as well. And this might flare up. Please tread not and also not try and tread on eggshells or try and do that. Like, that's not the way to do it. But
exactly that. It's
going to
don't
be like,
treat us with kid gloves.
I think
don't patronize us.
There is something about RSD where it's just like, I can't talk to you because you got RSD. It's just no, like there's that side and there's that side. Surely there's got to be there's a middle ground for everything. That's the best start, and then we can work on our sort of things and stuff. But it's almost, I mean, there's horrible stats of like neurodivergent marriages, like 80% of them not working yet. Like that, I look at that and I go, well, what's the dynamic? What went wrong with that and stuff as well? Like, what did they, should they go on a therapy? Like, and then when you go to you can go to individual therapy, you can go to couples therapy, but then it just feels like so many blurred lines and so many kind of contrasts and stuff that which a lot of late diagnosis brings up, because you're not just crossing your own. And obviously if you do it single, it's still massively hard and stuff. So I don't know it from being a single person. I just know it from wife and children and business and everything as well. Like, oh my goodness, right, it's not like things are going to drastically change, but there is like a massive shift. But that shift and that transition to be able to feel like you get over to the other side, if there even is other side. I don't know if this process just keeps going and going, but to get to a point where you're fully aware of yourself, like you said, you're fully accepting, all this sort of stuff as well. And it's different for everybody, but navigating that, I think it's it's complex, but it's necessary at the same time.
Yep. And I think, kind of going back again, it's when you're going through that journey, it's finding your tribe, it's finding your people, it's finding your community, it's finding the people that stand with you and get you. That's part of the journey, and sometimes that's the best bit of the journey, because to find people that you can be unapologetically yourself is what truly matters. And some people don't get that, and I think even if you have one person, do you know what I mean, compared to none, that's a win.
That's the note to end it on.
Boom, drops the mic.
Boom, you dropped the mic right at the end. Thank you, Jess, as always.
Amazing. Thanks,
See,
Ped.
that was absolutely fine.
Didn't rabbit on at all.
We went on to loads of different rabbit holes, but I was definitely verbally expressing a lot through that at the same time. I was like, hang on a minute, what lines am I crossing here? I'm going to, Jesus. Yeah, no, it's
Love
great.
it.
Cool.
Thanks, Ped.
No worries. Right, I'm going to go pick
All right,
up the
sweet.
kids.
Oh, have fun.
Indeed.
All right, darling. I'll see you next week.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to hear more episodes, head to your favorite podcast app or platform and search for The Neurodivergent Musician. There are lots of solo and guest episodes to dive in with insights, improvised babble, and recommendations. I also encourage you to go and check out my new album, Neurodivergent, which is how I process my whole experience from unaware to aware, from undiagnosed to diagnosed, and more through music. And finally, if you are a neurodivergent musician and looking for a community where you can unmask and be you, please do come and join in. We deliver free workshops with Q&As and more. All links are in the podcast description, or you can find out more info at johnhartmusic.com or theneuroDivergentmusician.co.uk. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers. Take care.